So who makes the final decision? And this answer is becoming standardized because we're moving to the live hearing process, but there's still, schools still have choices in how the decision is handled at the live hearing, what the live hearing looks like. So do you want to have one report that just has two sections, the investigation section and the findings, or do you want to have two separate reports? The investigatory report has no opinions. It doesn't make any recommendations. It doesn't discuss whether there's guilt or a finding. It just outlines the facts of the case. Now, if the evidence supports a finding, that the outline should back that up. It should support that. So it almost reads like it's supporting a certain, or there's a certain opinion, but it's not. It's actually just a discussion of the evidence. So if you go with the combination, you could have that and then just add on, the decision maker adds on a section at the end with the decision, kind of referring back to things the investigator said. That might become a little bit complicated. That might become an issue where a decision maker has the ability to edit a report written by the investigator. So with the way things are changing, this may become a moot point where you have to have a separate findings report. The findings report is going to have a detailed explanation of the facts supported by evidence that led to the conclusion. So you state your conclusion, there is a finding or there's no finding, and this is why, and reference the investigation report and the information brought up in the live hearing, the cross-examination. So this is a separate report. So you can do this add-on or the separate. I think the separate is probably going to work more effectively, but if you do that, they should look the same. If you're using a template, the findings report template should look very similar, have the same styling as your investigatory report template. You want this to look like a cohesive process from beginning to end. So it's different, it's labeled differently, it has different fill in the blanks, different function, but you can see that they are related. They are part of the same process, just the next step. So I talked about the documentation separately of the exhibits, and I specifically use the example of a statement. So you need to decide how you are going to document. Interviews are a very big part of Title IX cases. You are going to have cases where you interview dozens of people, especially if there was, happened at a big party or something. So you have to decide how are you going to document those interviews. So are you going to record them? Audio, video, both? So obviously you need to take into account state laws, whether it's a two-party consent state, one-party consent. If it is two-party, how are you going to get that consent? Talk to your legal. Is it sufficient that you just have a sign on the wall saying, entering this room acknowledges consent to be recorded? Is it you walk in and you have a form that they have to sign? What do you need to be legally sufficient at your university based on the state you live in? So talk to legal about that. One of the arguments, so we started doing that at BYU, and one of the arguments against was, first of all, is technology. It costs money. Where are we going to store it? How are we going to record it? But then also, will we get consent? Are we going to have students who have a problem with being recorded? So that we have some people in our investigation recorded and others not. We have these inconsistencies. And what I've found, not only at BYU, but also at NCIS, where I was dealing with military members of that same age range, very rarely did anyone not want to be recorded. In fact, for the most part, they felt better and safer that it was being recorded. Think about the trend in law enforcement. People are demanding that law enforcement officers walk around with a camera all day to record their interactions. People expect things to be recorded. The students that we're dealing with, the generation that we're dealing with, are used to everything they do being captured by video or photograph. They document everything visually. So I've found that being recorded, having a camera in the room, was never even an issue, except in very unique circumstances. The most I had was, so the way I would do it is I would walk, I didn't want it to be a secret, so I didn't have a hidden camera. It was visible. I'd walk into my interview room with them, and I would very deliberately turn around and push record on the camera, and they would see the red light beep on. Usually didn't say anything, didn't even think anything of it. Every once in a while they say, "Oh, you're recording this?" And I would say, "Yeah, yes, I am. I just want to make sure that I document it accurately and I have an accurate picture of it, and recording is the best way to do it. I'm going to take notes as well, but the recording, I won't miss anything that way." And I think I've never actually had anyone have a problem with that. Everyone said, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I even had people say, "Oh, well, can I record as well?" So you have to decide if you are going to record, or you're going to allow them to. Personally, I'm not afraid of recording. I don't say anything. I don't say anything to my interviewees that I wouldn't say on video. Everything I say is appropriate. So I have no problem if someone wants to record me. And I would rather have my own recording to protect myself. And think of it this way. Your students are coming into your office, and whether they ask you or not, they're recording the conversation. They're hitting record on their phone before they walk into the room and recording the conversation. So do you want them to be the only owners of this recording where they can edit it and change it, or do you want to have your own accurate record? So I'm a big proponent of recording. It does become a big burden. So generally what I did is I video recorded complainants and respondents, and then I audio recorded witnesses. That was just a decision that I made that helped with time management, and it seemed to work effectively. You may decide you want to do them all the same, one way or the other. And then you have to do phone interviews that make sure that you are able to record those. I found that with a voice recorder and putting the phone on speakerphone, because I had a quiet office where I could close the door, that was sufficient. But those are questions you need to answer, decisions you need to make. And whatever you do, be consistent. You can't say, "Oh, this is an important case and going to garner attention, so we need to record everything." And then the next case, you're like, "Yeah, this is just a student, no big deal," and you don't record anything. If your policy is to record, you record everything. The only excuses would be a tech failure. The camera didn't work, the batteries ran out, something like that. And then you document that, why there's no recording. The second question that I got asked was, well, if we record it, do we have to transcribe everything? Because in court, that is generally an issue that's required. That takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources. Outsourcing it is very expensive. There are companies that do that, but it is very expensive. What I found, honestly, is that those days are past. People don't expect and actually don't want to read a transcript. If someone needs to go back and review your interview, they want to watch the video. People are more engaged and more willing to watch video than to read. So your recording stands on its own. So you can do it a couple ways. That's it, it's just a recording. The problem with that is it forces the person to have to go through an hour-long video to find the information they need. So the way that I did it is this. I took the recording and then I took notes. I've been doing it a long time, so I am able to take legible, accurate notes of pretty much everything the person says in an interview and do it in a way where I'm still engaged. It's taken a lot of experience and practice. This is a skill built over hundreds of interviews. So I write an interview summary. So on this date, at this time, I interviewed this witness in the Title IX interview room or office. And so you have kind of the details, the who, what, and where, and then write the relevant information. Every interview is going to have a lot of facts that aren't really relevant. They're recorded, on the document, they're recorded in your notes. Talk about witness stated that on this date, this happened. Witness stated, furthermore, that this happened. So, and then document the questions that you ask specific questions. That means that was relevant information, so include that. Anything that you think pertains to or is relevant to the allegation, summarize that in paragraph form in an easily readable form. So you kind of have levels. The person you're writing in your report, it says, the complainant stated she was assaulted on this date in this location when the respondent did X, Y, and Z. See Exhibit 1. You look at Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1 goes into detail of what happened and kind of all the explanation of what happened in a page or two. And then if the person wants more information, all of the other details, they can go to the video. So you can include your video as part of the report, or you can just notate that it's maintained in the file and accessible if needed. So the decision maker, as you're reviewing this document, you can determine if you have sufficient information. If you read the witness summary, is that enough, or do you need more? And if you need more, you can go to the recording and listen to it. So decision makers, take advantage of that. If you need to listen to it to make a decision, to get more information, do it. The investigator's job is to write everything they believe is relevant. And they have the best knowledge of what is relevant because they're putting together this puzzle piece. But there's always additional stuff. And you have that video as the backup. So that, I found that very effective. It's kind of 3 levels of documentation. So 3, from the really brief summary to the detailed summary to the actual interview itself. And then what about, how do you document reviewing evidence? You want to, same thing, write a quick summary, how you obtained the evidence, how you stored it, when and where you reviewed it, and then what you found, what it means, what it corroborates. Sometimes the evidence stands on its own, you don't need a summary. So in your investigative plan or in your notes, you'll have documented the how, when, and who, where you got it. So it's there, it's documented in your file. But sometimes if you have text messages, so your report says the complainant stated that she texted the respondent later that night, accusing him of taking advantage of her, and he replied by apologizing, see Exhibit 2. And Exhibit 2 is a screenshot of those text messages. So all that is doing is corroborating her statement, saying she said this happened and here's the proof that it happened. You don't need a summary of what those texts say. They are easily digestible all by themselves. They stand alone. So I have a lesson on investigative planning that talks about how to build your investigative plan and how to document receipt of evidence. So your evidence should already be documented. Other times you may have to review 1,000 pages of text messages, so it's worth writing a summary. I reviewed these text messages that included 1,000 pages between the dates of July 1st and December 2nd, and on page 56, date September 13th, this was said, supporting or corroborating this fact. And then on October 21st, this was said, supporting this fact. And then you would attach those copy of those pages to that summary so people can see the actual documents. That way you're not attaching 1,000 pages. Again, just like the video, it's available for review if needed, but it's not relevant. The decision maker doesn't need to read 1,000 pages because the investigator already did. So the investigator attaches all of that to that exhibit, to that evidence review summary.